Hey everyone. This is Six Path Weeb, and I welcome you all to my YouTube channel. Today's fanfiction topic is, what if Naruko was trained by the Salamander? In this alternate Naruto universe, we'll explore a completely different path for our favorite ninja. Imagine a world where Naruko's destiny changes early on, where instead of following the same journey we know, she is taken under the guidance of the legendary Salamander. How would her abilities evolve? How would her mindset change? And most importantly, how would this affect the entire shinobi world? Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. The content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now, with that out of the way, let's begin the story. The mist above the Great Bridge was slowly drifting back toward the sea, revealing the wooden planks glistening with rain. The storm that had rolled in earlier was finally beginning to calm, and the quiet sound of water dripping from the railings filled the air. Zabuza knelt on the bridge, breathing heavily after the long and exhausting day. His large sword rested beside him, planted firmly into the wood. A few steps away, his young apprentice lay peacefully asleep, having used nearly all his strength helping defend their position. Zabuza looked at the boy and gave a tired smile. It had taken teamwork, patience, and a great deal of effort from everyone present to finally end the chaotic struggle and bring the situation to a stop. Across the bridge stood a group of young ninja from the Hidden Leaf Village. Among them was a bright-eyed girl with golden hair tied in a short ponytail. Her name was Naruko, and she stood with her hands on her hips, rainwater dripping from the ends of her jacket sleeves. Even though she was soaked from head to toe, her spirit remained as energetic as ever. Naruko glanced around at her teammates. She noticed Kakashi rubbing the back of his neck thoughtfully while the others caught their breath. "What a day," Kakashi muttered calmly. "Next time we take a simple escort mission, I hope it stays simple." Naruko laughed. "But then it wouldn't be an adventure, Kakashi-sensei." Before anyone could reply, a loud clapping sound echoed from the far end of the bridge. Everyone turned. Standing there was a short man in an expensive coat. He was surrounded by a large crowd of guards carrying umbrellas and lanterns. The man clapped slowly, smiling in a way that made it clear he believed he had arrived at the perfect moment. Well, he said smugly. "Looks like everyone is tired. That makes things much easier for me." Beside him stood two guards holding a rope tied around the wrists of Tsunami, the kind woman who lived near the bridge with her family. She looked worried, though she tried to remain calm. Naruko's expression changed immediately. "That's not fair," she said, stepping forward. "You can't just grab someone like that." The man only chuckled. "Fairness has nothing to do with business." But before he could say anything more, something strange happened. The ropes around Tsunami suddenly slipped loose. In the blink of an eye, a cloaked figure appeared beside her, gently guiding her a few steps away from the guards. The newcomer wore a dark blue cloak decorated with the symbol of a many-headed sea creature. A mask covered the lower half of the figure's face, and bright blue eyes shone from beneath the hood. The guards looked around in confusion. "Where did you come from?" one of them asked. The mysterious shinobi tilted her head slightly, almost playfully. "Good question," she said in a calm voice. The short man frowned and motioned for a few guards to step forward. They rushed toward the cloaked figure, but as soon as they reached her, she dissolved into a splash of water that scattered harmlessly onto the bridge. A surprised gasp ran through the crowd. Then the same calm voice spoke again, from behind them. "Over here." Everyone spun around. The cloaked shinobi now stood beside Tsunami once more, who was no longer tied up. The mysterious ninja gave a small bow toward the startled woman. "Please don't worry," she said kindly. "You're safe now." Naruko's eyes lit up with amazement. "Whoa," she whispered. "Did you see that?" Kakashi smiled slightly beneath his mask. "A clever technique." The cloaked shinobi turned her attention to the short man and studied him carefully. "You are Gato, correct?" she asked. He crossed his arms, clearly annoyed. "And if I am?" The shinobi thought for a moment before answering. "My task today," she said, "is not to harm anyone. But it is to stop people who cause trouble for others." She gestured calmly toward Tsunami and the frightened townspeople watching from the far side of the bridge. This bridge was built so families could travel, trade, and work together. It should be a place of hope. Naruko grinned at that. "Yeah," she said loudly. "That's exactly right." The mysterious shinobi nodded in agreement. "So here is what will happen," she continued gently. You and your guards will leave this bridge and allow the people here to continue their work in peace." The crowd of guards shifted nervously. None of them seemed eager to argue. Gato looked around and realized that, for the first time that day, he no longer seemed to be the one in control. The rain slowed to a soft drizzle as the mist finally cleared away, revealing the long bridge stretching proudly across the water. Naruko stepped forward with a bright smile. "Looks like this bridge is going to have a happy ending after all," she said. Gato crossed his arms and sneered. "You're a fool if you think you can stand against all my men, boy. If you apologize nicely, I might even let you go." The blonde ninja tilted her head and laughed, though not in a scary way. It was a bright, playful laugh, like someone who had just heard a silly joke. The people on the bridge blinked in confusion. Kakashi studied the newcomer carefully. Something about the young ninja seemed familiar. The golden hair, the confident stance. It stirred a memory he couldn't quite place. Nearby, Sakura and Ino stayed close to Tazuna, watching nervously but bravely. The mysterious ninja raised her hands and formed a few quick hand signs. The last one ended with a small bird shape. Soft ribbons of water rose from the misty air around the bridge. Instead of crashing or splashing, they twirled gently like dancers in the wind. Soon, the water formed 9 graceful shapes that looked like friendly serpents made of sparkling droplets. "Suiton, Hydra Gale," the blonde ninja said cheerfully. The watery serpents glided across the bridge. But instead of hurting anyone, they simply swept the mercenaries off their feet and slid them safely to the side of the road, where they landed in harmless puddles. Some were so surprised they forgot to be angry. Others were too busy wringing water from their sleeves. In only a few moments, the bridge was clear. Gato stared with wide eyes as the last water serpent swirled in front of him like a curious pet. The cloaked ninja stepped forward. "Gato," she said calmly, "people shouldn't use fear to get what they want. The Mizukage sent me to make sure you stop causing trouble here." The watery serpent gently lifted Gato's hat off his head and dropped it in his hands. "You have a choice," the ninja continued kindly. "You can leave and promise never to bother these people again. Or you can stay and listen to the villagers explain why bridges should bring people together, not keep them apart." Gato gulped. Being surrounded by 9 floating water serpents, even friendly ones, was enough to make him think very hard about his decisions. I'll go," he stammered quickly. "I'll leave right away." The serpent splashed happily and dissolved back into mist. The ninja turned toward the others. Kakashi finally stepped forward. "Thank you for helping us," he said. "But may I ask who you are?" The blonde ninja scratched the back of her head shyly. "Oh, right. I guess I should introduce myself." She lowered her hood, revealing bright blue eyes and a cheerful grin. "My friends call me Hydra," she said. "But my real name is Naruko." Kakashi raised an eyebrow slightly. The name stirred that same strange sense of familiarity. Naruko stretched her arms and looked around the bridge. "I came here to make sure things were peaceful. Looks like the bridge is safe now." She glanced toward Zabuza and Haku, who were sitting nearby recovering from the long day. Instead of fighting, they simply looked tired and thoughtful. Naruko walked over and crouched beside them. "Hey," she said gently. "You two look like you could use some rest." Zabuza blinked. "You're not going to chase us away?" Naruko shook her head. "Nah. Everyone deserves a chance to choose a better path." Haku looked up at her with surprise. "Why would you help us?" Naruko smiled warmly. "Because someday I want to build a place where people who feel left out can belong. A place where no one has to feel alone." The wind blew softly across the bridge as everyone listened. Zabuza rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "That's a pretty big dream for someone your age." Naruko grinned. "Yep. But big dreams are the best kind." Haku's eyes sparkled with quiet wonder. Then Zabuza looked at her curiously. "You said you've wanted to meet me since you became a Genin. Why's that?" Naruko laughed and pointed playfully at him. "Because everyone says you're one of the strongest swordsmen around. And I wanted to ask if you'd teach me some cool sword tricks someday." For the first time all day, Zabuza laughed too. The mist drifted gently around the bridge, and for the first time, it felt peaceful. "Well, it seems you and I both discovered a clever way of skipping the academy lessons," Naruko said with a playful grin. Zabuza raised an eyebrow at that, clearly curious. "Oh?" he asked. "And how did you manage that?" Naruko laughed softly and scratched the back of her head. "Nothing dramatic. I just finished all the academy challenges early. The teachers didn't quite know what to do with me after that. I guess they thought I was a little energetic." Haku covered her mouth with a quiet giggle. So they let you go on your own path? Haku asked. Pretty much, Naruko replied brightly. One instructor told me that if I really wanted to learn, I should travel and find masters who could teach me new things. So that's what I've been doing ever since. Zabuza folded his arms thoughtfully. That explains your confidence. Naruko nodded. I like learning from all kinds of people. Everyone has something special to share. For a moment, the three of them stood quietly as a gentle breeze moved through the trees. Well, Naruko said at last, clapping her hands together cheerfully, I know you'll probably need time to think about my offer. Zabuza and Haku exchanged a quick glance. After a moment, they both nodded. We'll do it, Zabuza said. Naruko blinked in surprise. Oh. Well. That was faster than I expected. On one condition, Zabuza added. Naruko groaned dramatically. There's always a condition. Zabuza allowed a small smile. I will teach you my style of swordsmanship. And in return, you will take care of my sword and continue its tradition. Naruko stared at him. Wait. Really? Yes, Zabuza said calmly. A sword like that deserves someone who will train with dedication and respect. I believe you might be that person. Naruko looked both shocked and honored at the same time. Wow. Thank you, she said sincerely. I promise I'll learn everything I can. Haku smiled warmly at the exchange. There's one more thing, Zabuza continued. Haku prefers studying healing and helping others. I don't want her involved in dangerous missions. Haku looked a little embarrassed but nodded. I've always wanted to learn medicine. Naruko's face lit up immediately. That's perfect, she said. I actually know someone who teaches amazing medical skills. If she agrees, I could introduce you. Haku's eyes brightened with excitement. Really? Of course. Naruko replied. Zabuza stood up slowly with Haku's help. There was a thoughtful expression on his face. Before we leave, he said, there are two things I'd like to know. Naruko tilted her head. Sure. Ask away. Why did you choose Ame as your destination? Zabuza asked. And Hydra? That can't be your real name. Naruko grew quiet for a moment. Her bright blue eyes drifted toward the horizon, thoughtful and distant. Ame, she said softly. It's part of a promise. Actually, two promises. One to a friend, and one to a teacher who believed in me. She walked a few steps ahead before turning back toward them. With a gentle motion, she pulled down the cloth covering the lower half of her face. 6 small whisker-like marks rested on her cheeks, and a cheerful smile spread across her face, warm and bright like sunlight after rain. My real name, she said proudly, is Uzumaki Naruko. She placed her hands on her hips with confidence. I'm the Jinchuriki of the 9-tailed fox, and the student of a very wise teacher who taught me to never give up on my dreams. Her smile grew even brighter. And one day, she added happily, I'm going to build a place where everyone can learn, help each other, and become their very best selves. Haku looked inspired. Zabuza gave a quiet nod of approval. And together, the three of them began walking down the road, ready for the many adventures and lessons that awaited them ahead. Zabuza watched quietly from the shade of a tall tree. He could not help staring at the scene before him. His new student moved across the grassy field with surprising grace. The golden-haired girl spun lightly with her oversized practice sword, her steps careful and balanced. Wooden training clones, gentle water copies that Naruko had created, moved around her in a playful circle. It had been 6 days since the bridge mission, and Naruko had taken to learning the great sword almost as if it were a dance. She stepped forward, tapped one of the watery clones with the flat of her blade, and laughed as it splashed apart into a puddle. Then she twirled around and gently tagged another clone, which dissolved into sparkling droplets that glimmered in the sunlight. The last clone bowed dramatically before disappearing with a tiny splash. Naruko dropped onto the grass and stretched her arms over her head. Wow! I am really tired, she said, puffing out a breath as she leaned against the huge sword planted in the ground. That, Zabuza said as he walked toward her, is usually what happens after you train all morning. Naruko grinned up at him. But you're doing very well, he added, folding his arms. Especially after only a week. Naruko shrugged happily. It's because of the clones, she explained. I made a special kind by mixing 2 techniques together. They're water clones, but a little sturdier. I call them Hydrobunshin. Zabuza tilted his head. That name sounds creative. Naruko laughed. Hey, naming things is not my best skill. But practicing is. Zabuza let out a quiet chuckle. So when will we see you again? Naruko stood up, brushing grass from her clothes. In about 2 months, she said thoughtfully. Let's meet in Tanzaku town. That should be a little while after the Chunin exams. She lifted the large sword onto her shoulder. And make sure you stay safe, she added with a bright smile. Good friends are hard to find. Zabuza nodded. All right, kid. We'll see you then. Naruko stepped back, forming a quick hand sign. A swirl of cool mist curled around her feet, and in a blink she vanished down the path. Haku looked up at Zabuza with a thoughtful expression. She's going to do something important someday, isn't she? Zabuza stared at the empty road where Naruko had stood. Yes, he said slowly. No matter what path she chooses, people will remember her name. They stood quietly for a moment. Then Zabuza scratched his head. So, what should we do for the next few months? Haku laughed softly. Perhaps we should train too. 2 days later, Naruko sat peacefully at a quiet hill where 3 countries met. The sky above was full of drifting gray clouds, and a cool breeze rustled the grass around her. Her large sword rested beside her while she watched the horizon. Suddenly she sensed someone nearby. You are far from home, young traveler. Naruko turned. A woman wearing a long cloak stepped gently out from behind a tree. Her hair was a soft shade of blue, and small pieces of folded paper floated around her like tiny birds. Naruko smiled politely. Sometimes traveling helps you learn new things, she said. The woman studied her calmly. You take many risks walking alone. Naruko tilted her head. And you take risks meeting strangers, she replied kindly. For a moment they simply looked at each other. Then the woman's serious expression softened. It's good to see you again, Naruko. Naruko's smile widened. Hi, Konan. Konan walked closer and sat beside her on the hill. The floating paper birds settled around them like decorations in the grass. I missed talking with you, Konan said warmly. Me too, Naruko replied. She reached into her cloak and pulled out a folded piece of paper. What's that? Konan asked. My list, Naruko said proudly. Konan raised an eyebrow as Naruko unfolded it. The paper had 2 columns written neatly across it. Ongoing goals. Make new friends and allies. Learn new ninja skills. Help people who need it. Immediate plans. Find a great sword teacher. Do my best in the Chunin exams. Meet up with friends. Think of a cool team name. Design an awesome cloak. Konan covered her mouth to hide a small laugh. You really like making lists, don't you? Naruko nodded seriously. It helps me stay organized. Konan handed the paper back. So where are you going next? I need to visit Konoha soon, Naruko said. You could come with me if you want. Konan looked thoughtful. That might be interesting. Naruko leaned back against the sword and looked up at the clouds. Traveling with friends makes the road feel shorter. Konan smiled at that. The two sat together quietly, watching the sky while paper birds floated gently through the air. Somewhere in the distance, another traveler was approaching along the road, but for now, the peaceful moment on the hill felt like the start of a brand new adventure. Naruko flickered her eyes toward Konan's face and noticed that she had sensed the approaching presence as well. The blue-haired woman narrowed her eyes at the single figure walking toward them. Kisame. The blonde Kiri Kunoichi followed Konan's gaze and focused on the approaching rogue shinobi. The tall man with shark-like features walked toward them at an easy pace, wearing a wide grin. Konan, whatever are you doing so far away from home? He asked with a toothy smile. Konan remained calm. I should ask you the same question. Kisame shrugged lightly. Oh, Itachi and I were returning to Amigakure after a report. I thought I'd look around for you. He rested a hand on the handle of the large sword on his back. And instead, I find you traveling with a young Kiri shinobi. That's interesting. Naruko calmly adjusted the mask she wore for breathing underwater missions and reached down to lift the great blade resting beside her. The enormous Kubi Kiri Hocho looked almost too large for her, but she carried it with confidence. Kisame tilted his head curiously. That's quite a sword for someone your age. Naruko smiled slightly. It's heavy, but I like a good challenge. Konan watched quietly as the two stood facing each other. The air between them felt tense, like the moment before a summer storm. Kisame chuckled. You've got spirit, kid. Naruko glanced at Konan for a moment, silently asking her to let her handle the situation. Then she planted the wide blade into the ground and formed a quick series of hand signs. Suten, Suryudan no Jutsu. From the moisture in the air, a beautiful swirling dragon made of water appeared and rushed forward with a splash. Kisame stepped aside quickly, raising his eyebrows in surprise. Well now, he said. That's impressive. Creating a water dragon from the air itself. Naruko gave a cheerful grin behind her mask. Water techniques are my specialty. She formed another seal. Suten, Mizurappa. A powerful stream of water burst forward, splashing across the ground and sending droplets sparkling in the sunlight. Kisame hopped back to avoid the spray and laughed. All right, he said. You've made your point. Naruko relaxed and pulled her large sword from the earth, resting it against her shoulder. Sometimes showing your skills is easier than arguing. Kisame looked between her and Konan and then scratched the back of his head. Seems like today isn't the day for a long disagreement. I'll be on my way. With that, he disappeared into a swirl of mist. Naruko waited a moment, listening carefully until she was sure he had gone. Then she laughed softly. Well, that was exciting. Konan walked over, her expression thoughtful. You handled that very well. Naruko's bright blue eye sparkled happily. Thanks. She then snapped her fingers suddenly. Oh. I almost forgot something. Konan-chan, may I see your ring for a moment? Konan raised an eyebrow but removed the ring and tossed it to her. Naruko caught it and took a delicate silver chain from around her neck. Tiny sealing marks were carved along the metal links. She carefully slipped the ring onto the chain and fastened it. The seals on this chain hide the ring's signal, Naruko explained. It keeps anyone from tracking it. Konan nodded slowly. Very clever. Naruko grinned proudly and motioned for Konan to follow her down the quiet path. Come on, she said. We still have one last stop to make in the Land of Fire before I head back to Kirigakure. 3 days later, the two arrived in a lively town filled with bright lanterns and colorful signs. They walked through narrow streets where music drifted through the evening air and people laughed as they passed by. Konan looked around curiously. Naruko. Why exactly are we meeting someone in this part of town? Naruko scratched the back of her head with a sheepish smile. Well. The message said it would be the easiest place to meet without attracting attention. She looked around at the busy streets and bright lights. Although I might have underestimated just how lively it would be. Konan gave a small amused smile. Naruko laughed and continued forward confidently. Don't worry, she said. Wherever the meeting is, I'm sure it'll turn into another great adventure. Konan looked at Naruko with curiosity. What, no grand dream of ruling the world? Or declaring yourself the leader of everything? Naruko laughed softly and shook her head. Her bright eyes held a calm determination. No, she said. Nothing like that. I just want a place where people who are different can belong. Somewhere kind. Somewhere peaceful. A place where no one feels left out because of something they were born with. For a moment, the hallway grew quiet. Makoto leaned against the wall, crossing his arms as he studied her thoughtfully. His red hair shifted slightly as he tilted his head. That's surprisingly simple, he said. Most people with unusual gifts dream much bigger. Naruko smiled. Simple doesn't mean small. Sometimes the best dreams are the ones that help people smile. Konan nodded beside her. She seemed proud of Naruko's answer, and the faintest smile touched her lips. Daisuke stepped forward from the doorway, brushing a bit of dust from his white pants. Behind him, the room looked a little messy, as if he had been rearranging the furniture in a hurry. So, he said thoughtfully, you want to build a peaceful place for people like us. Naruko nodded. Daisuke rubbed his chin as if considering a difficult puzzle. Then he gave a small shrug. Well, that sounds a lot nicer than wandering around the world looking for trouble. Makoto chuckled. You say that as if you ever enjoyed wandering in the first place. I enjoy snacks, Daisuke replied. And quiet afternoons. Wandering is very low on my list. Konan covered her mouth to hide a laugh. Naruko brightened. If we succeed, there will definitely be quiet afternoons. And plenty of snacks. Now that, Makoto said with a grin, is a convincing plan. He glanced at Daisuke. What do you think, Dai-chan? Should we hear more about Naruko's idea? Daisuke folded his arms and looked at Naruko carefully. For a moment, he seemed very serious. Then his expression softened. If her dream is really about building a place where everyone belongs, he said, then I'd at least like to help her try. Naruko's face lit up with excitement. Really? Really, Daisuke said. But I have one request. What is it? Naruko asked. He pointed toward the room behind him. First, we clean up the mess in there. I may enjoy snacks and quiet afternoons, but I also enjoy tidy rooms. Makoto laughed loudly. A noble mission indeed. Konan smiled warmly as the four of them stepped into the room together. What had started as a mysterious meeting was quickly turning into something else entirely. Not a secret plan. Not a battle. But the beginning of an unusual friendship, and perhaps the first step toward the peaceful place Naruko dreamed of creating. The man called Hydra laughed softly, though there was a tired edge in her voice. And fail horribly? No. The world cannot be saved completely. There will always be people with different intentions who stand in the way of that, she said. But if I can give peace to even one small country as its guardian, then maybe my life will mean more than simply being the container of the QB. Makoto and Daisuke looked at each other for a moment, then smiled warmly. Good enough for us, Makoto said. Until the day you take Ame comes, we will be your eyes and ears in the world. Naruko grinned beneath the shadow of her hood. Good. I would like us to meet in Tanzaku-gai a week after the Chunin exams. Hopefully, we will have a few more friends with us by then. The Crimson Ghost tilted his head, a smile hidden behind his mask. We will see you then, Hydra-sama. Naruko and Konan waved goodbye and parted ways with the two Jinchuriki, the wind gently stirring the grass as the friends went in different directions. 3 weeks later, after returning to Kiri and completing their long journey, Naruko and Konan found themselves walking along a quiet dirt path. The tall gates of Kanahagakure no Sato slowly came into view ahead of them. The village looked peaceful in the afternoon sunlight. Naruko wore her traveling gear, including her protective mask and sturdy gloves. A large sword rested across her back, though she carried it carefully and respectfully, like a tool rather than a weapon. Konan walked beside her, dressed in simple shinobi clothing she had borrowed during their travels, with a headband tied neatly around her neck. Birds chirped in the trees nearby, and a warm breeze drifted across the road. Naruko paused for a moment and looked at the village gates. This was the place where she had grown up, learned, laughed, and dreamed about the future. Even after so many adventures, seeing it again made her smile. Konan noticed the expression on her friend's face. Are you nervous? She asked gently. Naruko shook her head, her bright eyes full of determination. No, she said. Just excited. She took a few steps forward, the sunlight shining behind her like a golden glow. Well then, Naruko said with a cheerful grin, let the games begin. Konan laughed softly, and together they continued down the path toward the village gates, ready for whatever new adventures, friendships, and surprises awaited them next. Dear YouTube family. That's all for now. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel to support more content like this. Thank you for watching. Regards. 6 Path Weeb.